This
This
conference will
conference
now be
will now be
recorded.
recorded.
I left mine in my floor. Go, Peter?
I did distribute copies of an agenda, just the giggles, and I forgot to attach it.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I'll ever get this. Please.
No, you don't wear it.
Gotta get a picture. I was gonna say, this is more like the 1800s, like doctor.
Always. Wear this one because it's like one of them old serial killer doctors.
Like you're headed into surgery.
I got one that was made for me that has all the big team names on it. I'm actually thinking about wearing that because these things are so funny.
Yeah.
You really should get something it out with a Lake Placid logo.
Listen, we're actually, and that's actually sort of a broad topic discussion a little bit further down here. But we're actually talking about that today with Roost.
Because you can do that with like football team or sports teams, and that would be a nice little memento. I spent the summer in Lake Placid.
Well, I also saw something that printed that says maintain social distancing on
County land has two big residents there.
it. I saw one with, that had a smile on it.
I'm sure of that.
Anyway, I thought the first thing we could touch on is this outdoor dining proposal has been moving along a little bit since you first heard about it last week. I did communicate with the Department of Transportation. The application, which I have, is simple from my perspective, complete. But what would be required is we would have to have the work that Craig Manning has done. In a sense, we would have to also purchase it for this Main Street diversion. The similarities are pretty substantial, and I think probably that is the next step. But I'm a little bit apprehensive about moving too quickly on this because restaurants, in particular, retail is coming up at phase 2. We may see that this Friday. And restaurants are 2 weeks beyond this Friday, which would put them at mid-June.
You said restaurants twice, retail.
Retail is Friday. Restaurants are in phase 3, which is hopefully is mid-June.
But is that, we're looking at, what was it, 25% capacity?
We don't know yet, and that's what my apprehension is. We have not seen anything yet from the state to particularly address the requirements under CDC of for retail stores or and certainly it's too early to expect them for restaurant properties. We've heard all kinds of discussion that they're going to reduce the capacity from maybe 50%, which I've seen, I think, New Hampshire, Vermont, maybe, or maybe even worse, reduce it to 30%. The interesting thing is that Jay and I sat in on 2 training sessions that North Country Chamber of Commerce sponsors. They got a whole series of them on every industry out there.
And they're recorded, so you can go back.
They are recorded, so you go back on their website and see them. The interesting thing is because the state's directives haven't been designed yet, most of this was written from a public, from an employer safety point of view for your employees. So, for example, they talked about maintaining social distance in the kitchen, requiring 250 square feet per person. Think about some of our Main Street kitchens. You're going to have to split yourself and only put half inside. Those are too small. So I don't know. I'm a little apprehensive as to how many restaurants may be interested in doing this sort of thing. If we were to proceed through with it, are we going to require that they apply for a permit? Or is it just going to be carte blanche? I think Bill and I, and Bill's been working a little bit with Greg, we sort of have envisioned not using the entire curbside for blocking it all off, but blocking off sections where maybe you have a restaurant, other sections where you don't.
Can I try to step in for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
So I've been working with Greg, we've been on the pavement and talking to people, whatnot. Well, here's the basic proposal that Greg has come up with. I had him, I got a manual for our Main Street project. That we did, and I had him tell us what they wanted, and then I thought we could tweak it to whatever our needs are. So if you want me to just go over it.
Why don't you do that?
Okay, so from Players, turning north on Main Street. My glasses are fogging up.
Just a question before you go any further. What is the rule in the town hall? I mean, we're 6 feet apart. I noticed the governor, when he's on TV, we're 6 feet apart, you don't need a mask. Or do we need them here in the town hall?
We've had a discussion with Bruce about this just a little while ago. The rule is that if you cannot maintain social distancing, you must wear a mask. And we were talking about how we might try to strengthen our enforcement of that here in the village. We'll get to that.
But I'm just saying, like right now, we're 6 feet apart, you don't need a mask.
Technically, I think you're correct.
But I don't want to violate anything if there's a rule in the town hall.
No, well, the town hall is in the process of, Jay is very democratic in his approach. He's sent a message out to all town people who are in the building. I did the same thing with the village and talked with all of you. The building's going to be open. You'll be required to use sanitizer. You'll be required to have a mask on when you're going in the building. If I go from my office to Anita's office, I'm supposed to have a mask on when I go into her office. So that is sort of the way it's going.
Okay.
Upstairs right now, I haven't gotten a full discussion from the ladies, but we've got things like the public coming. It's up until now, we kept the lower door. So somebody's going to call up and we can bring somebody up by appointment, but we make sure they've got a mask. But once you open the building up, people will be able to go from anywhere they want. So one possibility could be that the second floor might have a lock added to the stairwell here, and that would solve a lot of that. Anita raised the question, she said, I might be okay with the hallway being open, providing people understand that they can't just walk into anybody's office, which they do now. But she said the bathrooms, where sanitation is a big thing, would be locked. But I went back and looked at the second floor, there's no locks on those. I know downstairs here, they're talking about locking these, but here's the problem. The court system is going to reopen, I think June 20th, Bill?
Yeah, mid-June.
Mid-June.
Providing everything goes in.
And we're going to have, I think we're going to have in fact, we're thinking this room is going to be used as well because they've got a huge backlog of cases. So distancing is going to be an issue. So I think there's a little more discussion to go on. Jay was hoping this might be reopened by tomorrow, maybe it will be, or maybe we'll just start relaxing the standards a little bit. But masks are definitely going to be required. In your own office, you don't have to use one. But if you have other people in the office, especially public, it's probably advisable to use them. So that's part of the question on that. And then I've got a proposal for a little bit later for the broader community.
So the red lines are the ones where it will be blocked off, and
Yeah, so, but, it's probably better, Jason, to go by the words that I put there.
yeah,
So I'll just give you sort of a synopsis, if that's okay with you guys. So starting at Players, north on Main Street and all of the far end. So that will actually be closed. This is what they're proposing. Players to Saratoga Olive Oil, which is right by Midspark. It would be closed with the exception of an opening in front of Ruthie's Run and Premier Properties. And then,
Crosswalk there, Bill?
I'm sorry,
There's a crosswalk there.
there is, yeah, a crosswalk there as well. And then by the, the theater too, they're coming out as they're not in favor of the one-way. But the crosswalks will maintain those to be open. Now, it'll be open from the end of Saratoga Alba, so where that front of that building ends, right through to the popcorn store, which leaves Mid Parks open, EMS, the old Gap building. The popcorn store is the old John Wilkins, Mark Wilkins old building now. And then it'll be closed in front of the popcorn store and the Candyman, side by side, right there. At the end of the Candyman, it'll be open until the beginning of Big Mountain Deli. Okay, Big Mountain Deli, it'll be closed in front of their store. And then there's that Luna restaurant next door. It'll be closed in front of that. After that, you got You First Driveway. I think I spelled that incorrectly. That'll be open from the end of Luna right through to, I call it the NBT Bank Road. It's the road that goes down behind NBT. And then you have smoke signals, and we haven't heard back from them yet as far as if they want to close or not. I'm going to assume they do. So we'll be closed in front of smoke signals. And then at the end of the smoke signals in front of their building, it'll be open all the way to the Blue House, which is the old Shade Market.
Yep.
So that'll keep it open in front of the Bookstore Plus and open in front of the new Northwood building, the Hub. Another place where people stop a lot and to get coffee is Starbucks across the street. So they'll be parking, on the right side there. Okay, so now at the end of the Blue House, which is the old Shays Market, you got Emma's, which would be the next. That would be Jim Shays building, the old liquor store.
Yep.
Your Lake Liquor Store. Closed from there to the Imagination Station. And so but in there, it's kind of odd in there right now. So you have Emma's and then Purple Sage next door. Adirondack Trading Company, which is under construction. Non-vintage antiques. And then you got Willie's. There's 3 closed places right in a row, which I don't know when they're going to open. Maybe you guys know more than I do. Yeah, so those ones will be closed there now. We're just assuming, I haven't heard back from Two Hearts that she's going to want that, but it looks like that store may be closing. There's a sign there that's for sale. It's not closing, but
Yeah, she's selling.
is she okay?
She wants to sell.
Yeah, so Amy Hula's store. So starting at Two Hearts and Newman's News, it will be open right there. So people can stop and get a newspaper or whatever. And then at the end of Newman's News, you have Wyatt's. It basically starts the Alpine Mall. Wyatt's to the beginning of Baglan's. Baglan's Jewelry, it would be open in front of Baglan's. And then at the end of Baglan's, start at the Fallen Arch to Generations, it would be closed, which is the old Goldberries. And then it would be where the parking generally is, in front of the Golden Arrow. That would be all open parking. And then starting at the Sugar Shack to a place called Bear Essentials, it would be closed there in front of those ones. That makes it there's a hockey store there where they sharpen skates and stuff like that. But at the end, Caldwell Banker, and I think they want to stop in front. So, but some points to consider. Brad and I have been over this a little bit. If we have a fire call, an ambulance call, water leak, power problem, sewer backup, it's going to essentially shut Main Street right down. And because there's no way to get cars around those things, so.
Generally shut down Main Street anyway. And reroute.
For a fire call, we would, but maybe not for a water leak, we might be able to do one way or the other. Now you're going to be handicapped as far as you won't be able to get people around. And I don't know, Brad's.
Unless we can move around and block off.
Are we planning on a water leak in July and August?
Well, generally, I
Let's say you don't plan for it, they'll happen.
don't want to say generally, but a lot of times we do have that sewer backup in front of, sort of in front of Jimmy's 21 Players, whatever you want. Is that the situation
Yeah, that's.
resolved itself?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
But, you know, we know that the infrastructure there is, you know, that's why we're working on that other Main Street project, you know, the infrastructure is not so great, so. So that's what we're sort of planning on.
Main Street,
On that.
The only issue is, if they're
you're
gonna
right,
start,
it's gonna be open.
if they're gonna start, if they're gonna do this, you're gonna need to be able to start getting ready to do this soon.
Yep, it means we've got to pull the cord on the Great Manning piece right away, because
So
that's,
that's getting everything ready to, because if they're gonna use boulders like we're talking, a lot of boulders you need to round up in a short time.
Yeah.
Have to
And
know
move.
whether or not we're doing it and move.
It's gonna take some time out to do it.
So it's not like we can wait on this until all the pieces fall together. If this is something that we're really gonna do, I need to know soon.
What about loading zones?
That's another, you know, another issue to consider. That was my next point, is that we're gonna have to have early morning drop-offs, and there really isn't gonna be. So it's either gonna be double park for a few minutes on Main Street. It is gonna be fairly wide in a couple spots. But the general spots where we know that there's gonna be a problem, like right in front of the theater where it narrows down, that's our narrowest part of Main Street. That's gonna be problematic right there.
But there is a loading zone there.
Across the
They'll
road.
stay open, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple of them now. I don't know whether we have to make a loading zone on the opposite side of the street.
Well, you have the ability also, don't you, to make that road a little wider there?
Well, we can place the blocks where we want. Now, it's my understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the people are gonna get that parking space in front of their place, maybe a little bit more, but not much. It's not all the way to the,
plus some of the travel lane, because the
Just a little bit,
have to sit inside that lane.
there was also some consideration about, you know, we have a lot of bike traffic and maybe making a bike lane on.
We're toying with the idea that we could have a bike lane. When you look at that, that really is a lot of square footage. When you take a full parking lane plus a full traffic lane. And yes, I mean, I'm assuming boulders will probably chop about 3 feet out of the traffic lane.
It is a lot and it isn't. Then you start putting tables 6 feet apart.
Yeah. The bike lane.
Well, and that's another piece of the operation we don't know. Is exactly what the requirements are going to be of the phase 3. And, you know, hopefully before they allow restaurants to reopen, they're going to have some standards. It's really weird because somebody brought to my attention that hotels shouldn't be open because nobody's written any standards for them. They're open because they've never been closed. And eventually there will be standards written for them. But right now, a hotel can accept anybody that comes to its door, whether they're essential workers or non-essential traffic. However, they cannot operate any food or beverage service for on-premise consumption in the dining room or bar, but you can call from your room and it's okay for room service. That's how White Base Lodge operates in the timeshares in that setting. So it's kind of curious. I think Art investigated this a couple of weeks ago and found that was true. If you're wondering why the public can't figure out what's going on,
Yeah, there's a lot of
Moving parts.
there's a lot of parts, so it's confusing.
The other half is you're gonna have to, you know, temporarily suspend your outdoor retail.
Yep.
And all things. And then we have the open container law that we kind of moved through, and, you know, we gotta work with the ABC board to make sure they do extensions of liquor licenses for restaurants, and then I'm assuming it's always been, my understanding that it has to be an enclosed area if somebody has an extension of their permit. So they have to have some sort of corral there.
So what we would do, and at the moment, we're operating under a declaration of emergency, so we could suspend or modify the alcohol consumption for public property regulation to the extent that we need to. And I would think we would modify it only to the extent that it would only apply where these areas are so designated for consumption, something like that, maybe.
But that's basically what the street's proposing. So that's basically what the street's proposing. You know, if anybody has, and I think they're going by my conversations with Greg and walking around with them, they're going by who wants it, who doesn't want it. But he seems to think now it's been a little bit of a moving target. At times, you know, somebody will say, yeah, I do want this, or the 50-50, and then they're in one way or the other now.
And again, I think the problem here is phase 3 and what's going to be great. For example, if they have to cut out 50% of their seating in their dining room, or have to cut out, you can't have people standing at the bar, sitting at the bar, where are they going to go? And I view it as the reason for doing this at this point, where 6 months ago we might not have even wanting to think about it, is the fact that these businesses are gone through 3 months now, basically, with minimal income. They're going to try to reopen. They're going to try to bring people back to work. And I think we've got a couple of issues here. One is reduced capacity. And these are the 2 best months of the year for them. And we don't know what those are going to look like this year, although they'll probably still be busy. And then number 2, where do they replace that? They don't have any place to replace it. And I think the public, the other side of it, is the public is going to be apprehensive about walking into a building. And furthermore, even the retail store is going to be required to limit the number of people based upon the size of their footprint that they can let in the shop, and that's got to include the number of people that are working in the store. At least that's what we're beginning to see. We should see more on retail this week, I would think, from the city.
What about as far as parking and charging goes? Well, when did we suspend that until?
It's under suspension until June 1st.
June 1st, okay. And I guess the consideration is going to be now there won't be as much parking. Are you going to have regular parking in the open spots or 15-minute parking? What are you going to do in the big lot where it used to be $5 all day, will now be by the hour?
I think, well, it was 50 cents an hour or $5 all day. And remember, when we set those rates, we set them to try to draw people off the street.
Right.
At this point, we're going to need to replace the revenue. And I'll probably curse this a bit, but I would propose that we take the 50 cents an hour up to our curbside rate. Recognizing that also without the hockey camps here all summer, that's one of our big users of the municipal lot. So that particular utilization isn't going to be there in most likelihood. So I mean, we've got a number of different things to consider here. Not the least of which is talking to somebody from the liquor board ourselves to make sure that what we're doing, they understand. We do have some help from our elected officials if we need it. But, I guess at this point, I sense that we should keep working on this plan. And probably go ahead and put the Creighton Manning piece in an application. We probably should do it in some manner that we can pull a string on it if something happens.
What's the date you're thinking of starting there in the end?
July 1st.
July 1st through August 31st.
August 31st.
If you're doing these.
I don't think we're going to have any events this summer, even though August still has events. What I'm seeing elsewhere and the way people are reading this, I think our major events that draw traffic are probably not here. They're already not here for July.
If you're gonna block them off the way you're talking, that means you're gonna have to have rocks going in also.
Yes.
So
So there's a lot of talk too.
It's gonna be boxed down in front of them.
Right, on like in front of the little square. Or some sort of delineation.
Don't scratch anything.
You know, and then another thing to consider, where was I going with that? They were talking, I've gotten several questions about putting a tent up in that curbside dining area.
I don't see that as being desirable.
Unless it rains all summer.
Well,
They have to be secured.
they have to be secured in some manner, and again, what here's, I mean, what I've heard from the other people around Greg is that they want the street to look nice.
It's gonna be hard to regulate how people are standing, waiting. If you've got, I mean, I went by Donald's ice cream. Like a,
What? I attended it. It was very militant. They had almost 6 feet apart, had to wear a mask, and you were like, moved, you stuck to it.
Officially, so.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be tough for them to regulate everything on Main Street, these rooms.
I think that's probably not a convention like that.
But my feeling is, when you get into tents, I don't know how you create uniformity. The other person with, I think Tammy Lowy from Green Goddess called me a couple times, would like all of the shops that are all of the restaurants, and they're doing this to consider maybe purchasing one style of dining furniture. We can't control that.
Well, it makes you look individual, so.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, you'd want that.
And I know we've worked for them, Jerry, Greg has more than anyone about how the appearance is gonna be,
I would,
wise, stuff like
I would think maybe by our next board meeting, which is only a few days away, maybe Brad and MJ could give us a little update on their vision this far. I think what you put together here is excellent. And in my mind, at least, it preserves the ability to service the street as well as some parking. I mentioned to Bill the other day that you talk about the possibility this might be for a bicycle lane, but I also talk about the possibility that where we have these open sections, maybe instead of parallel parking. You remember, Art, we tried a few years ago, we were looking at angled parking where you know.
You do that on a state road, can you? That's what we were told.
Get back into a state road, that's, unless they suspend that one, you're not supposed to back up into a state road.
But it would preserve a lot of parking.
The only issue with that is people going,
Yeah.
it's not like you're gonna come out of one of these Boston areas, go on the sidewalk, walk down, and get back there nice, you're gonna just walk. That's why the bike lane, you're gonna be going slow enough up there, why can't you just ride it?
Maybe the little shoulders.
I think,
A big enough shoulder where the rocks be pushed in off the yellow line, but you can ride it, but you try to make it designated bike lane too, you're gonna eat up a lot of the room.
And can you change the speed?
So maybe the space between the yellow line and the
15 miles
boulders
an hour.
becomes the lane.
Well, because a bike lane that's another state regulated thing, that's the size.
Right. But
So you'd have to show the rocks to make that, and then you're probably gonna need at least something marked.
a shoulder, just, place for something to
So, yeah, I mean, if it's big enough, you let them ride there and you don't call it a bike lane, you're fine. If you try to call it a bike lane, you're gonna have a distance.
So if we place the boulders back far enough to create a shoulder lane, this will not put up, which today we don't have.
that. Would we restrict it, Brett?
I don't think you can.
No.
feel like Ireland, we just all use the roads you need.
Well, I think part of the problem, and that's one of the concerns that I had talking to Greg, is that I think bicyclists are gonna go both ways there, and that can become problematic. And I asked him to put it on his social media sites to recommend.
How much parking do we have left on the west side?
Going, well,
Just in front of the ID.
so you'll have, High Peaks down to the theater, and then it becomes loading zone after steak and seafood, all the way, that'll be just what we have
What we got now.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no more parking, like, I suppose you could strike lines in front of steak and seafood in front of their driveway, say that we're done, that's, I don't know, they're parking there anyway.
It's true. We probably wouldn't even be thinking about this if we didn't have the Rotary Hill project coming around. And it's easy enough to do the pieces we've already got. Because if we were gonna do this any other time, we'd have to go and get a traffic plan created. And we're talking about using a plan that's already on the books.
You'd hate to take your brand new road and call it and scratch rocks on and off.
Well, The issue that you're gonna have is you can use our traffic control, our plane, but you're not gonna want it to look different. You're not gonna want it to look like what it's gonna look like during construction. Because during construction, it's gonna be quite signed out at the beach work. And you're not gonna want, that's not what they're gonna want up here. You know, they're gonna want something that looks like, they're not gonna want a sign every 10 feet saying detour and which direction each detour goes. That's how our detour is going to be. This is gonna be something that you're gonna have for a couple months that you're gonna want to, people are gonna have to just, you're gonna only use part of the plan. You're not gonna wanna use the signage plan, I would imagine. I mean, some of it back farther, getting trucks on, stuff like that, but I
Certainly, 86 on the list.
yeah, that stuff you can use, but I don't know if you're gonna want the signage if we're gonna have a Main Street when we do construction.
So,
One of the big issues is to get that stoplight up, like,
Yeah. And that was the other thing. Greg says the state's gonna put up all this stuff. I do not believe that's going to happen.
you know, I was wondering about that.
Steve says that they volunteered to put all the signage up. Maybe they did, I don't know. I just think it's pretty hard to get the state to do much of anything. Let alone they're gonna come in and set this detour up for us. I would imagine more than likely they're gonna want somebody to play. Not be one state does it.
So those are the things we've got to think about and explore a little bit further. But I think if you agree with me that, you know, we can start, I can make the contact with Great Neck and see if we can pull those plans and then modify them for what we're thinking here. Recognizing that some of it will go beyond August. In fact, some of it will be necessary. Well, maybe not this fall. Didn't I hear Ivan say this was going to be a soft start? this
Yeah,
fall?
we thought it would be parkside and maybe some holiday and help work, some parking lot work, nothing on the main road. We won't have a highway work commitment from the state, I don't believe. But we'll be able to work on anything that we possess ourselves.
Do we know if Ivan has given the state, I know I've seen a couple of communications back and forth with Christina. I'm not seeing anything that suggests that we're urgently in arrears with anything.
No, everything's pretty much been caught up with that. It's all pretty much caught up. The only thing we're waiting on were a few things held up that we were gonna talk about in that public meeting, that which isn't gonna happen now, so. I think Ivan pretty much has everything in plans. He's been talking with her, and her main thing is what do you want to use for a start date?
That's another issue. I mean, the press brought up the question legitimately the other night. We were preparing a public information session, and of course we got this virus issue shut that down. But I still think it would be nice for us to be able to get this project out in front of the community before we're, or at least as we're getting it ready to go to bed.
What's the finalized plan? There's nothing saying we can't have information.
Just do it online.
Yeah.
I had to do it online, and what I thought was, we've got visual drawings of the street, and Jim today indicated that by the end of the week, he expected we would have the visuals on proposed parking. And I'm still thinking that regardless of the Main Street, there's people out around, that we put them in the window and give the public an opportunity to see the visuals. Ivan had also told me that, I think he told me that in 2 weeks, this was a week ago, that we would have preliminary cost estimates on the Main Street construction. Obviously, we won't have those on the parking lots because that's a separate, that's going to be a separate project.
Yes, different. And I were on phone most of the morning. That's why he sent that email out this morning. He wants me, I've been in contact with Stolpen Engineering out of Syracuse. Jim, the guy that I'm working with, he's been doing this. He's a structural engineer, does steel and concrete. I guess he's an expert in that line of work. So he's the one that Jim and I were talking to. I had met him once. He's a long time ago. So we're gonna, Jim wants it to go through me to do. he said it'd be easier for me to answer questions or talk about the lot than it is with him. So we're working with them right now to get a proposal, or at least have them look at what we have, once Jim has a better set of plans,
Give us an estimate.
give us an estimate of what it's gonna cost. As soon as this stuff frees up enough, I think he wants to come on.
But I think, clearly the plan that the committee has developed with Edgecombe's assistance is probably the best that we're going to get. Peter's not here, but he's told me a couple of times now that, from a cost standpoint, this is the most efficient way we can create additional parking without breaking the bank, without having heavy excavation.
Yeah.
And it looks like all the pieces, there's one or two things left to work on. We've got, I mentioned to the other day that Stacy, we have Stacy's survey up there. Maybe I can take that and we can begin to talk to the other neighbor that wants to trade some land for access.
I asked her to try to send it electronically to us. I haven't seen anything yet. She was up here working.
I was going to say, I know she's been out here.
She's doing the layout for HMA.
So I guess at this point, Bill, it seems like we need to let this run a little bit longer.
The other piece of the puzzle there that I see is that we need to have public transportation up and running before we can.
That's another, like these three public transportation is going to be necessary. There's some discussion today, unrelated, Zoom meeting with some of the Clarkson families. And I just said, really dead in the water without that. People in Greenwood are limited as to what they can do. We don't see much in the way of Uber or Lyft drivers. We're not seeing much of anything going on in terms of public transport. So all of this is very small.
Larry Marty's on about.
So small.
Nowhere to go.
So unless if there's other thoughts you guys have, share them, get them to Bill or me, and we'll try to. I think there's a plan that is developing that we can implement if we don't find a reason not to.
Well, it sounds like the individuals who are most on the other side of the fence regarding the project, they seem to have been able to obtain some sort of what they want out of it. It's important.
So I
It
think
seems to be the best of both worlds.
I think we're trying to preserve what we can for parking and make it reasonable. And recognizing that, we don't want to break the bank for this project, which would be the case if it were a one-time thing. But since we're moving right into the other project, it's certainly possible that we can do it. Just a certain amount of work involved getting it done.
You and I talked about it. I know that there's a split on the Lake Placid Business Association board, but they're going to give us a letter of recommendation if they can get a majority. Is that what you got out of it?
That's why I called you. I haven't heard either way. The executive board was, but they were supposed to have a Zoom meeting. I don't know where it sits right now.
Okay, I did talk to Lori and I did say if you do, we'll need a letter one way or the other.
Yeah.
And that begs the question, if we don't get a letter of endorsement from the industry, is this dead in the water?
It could be. I think the problem we have with our business association is that its membership is largely
Retail.
and food and beverage hasn't had much of a voice in this project other than for Greg's support. But I think Roost, to the extent that they haven't officially endorsed it as a board, but unofficially they provided Greg with assistance.
Well, MJ said on the thing that Bruce would support, that the business association was in favor of it.
No, on the west side.
Nobody really meeting.
They don't get expansion, but keep their parking.
Some have.
Well, the west side has some on-premise outdoor.
Yeah, there's a lot of people along the couple of streets. I mean, they have in the Northwoods building you have, but then you get down to a few other places down along there that's not going to get that seating.
The Northwoods Inn people, I've talking to him about once a week. He did ask to be kept up to date, which we're doing. That conversation has more to do with, what they want to do to get started. And they were hoping that some of the work they wanted to do on the front while we were working on the streets, so we don't have that scheduled yet. So Mirror Lake sidewalk project, Brad.
They started this morning, started about mid of the project.
Northwood School.
Yeah, about thinking of a Northwood School entrance. Because they're gonna work both ways. By the end of the week, they should have the second crew up here running. That'll be Raymond doing structure work. Sounds like they're gonna start the structures in the town section first. Get those out of the way because they're a little easier than our section when we have the pipe run. We already had to change a couple of little things on the plan. Because of that condo units that Ken Harry's take care of. With the
Yep.
chipmunk.
So I just,
They don't want us crossing in front of their lawn. It'll be a plan with the drainage that comes out of there. So we're gonna have to go along the edge of this property, with split rail fences, catch that drain. Their drain's collapsing anyways. So we were trying to save them a problem, but they don't want to lose any of their trees. Would rather we go in the other direction, so I was talking to Nord, we're trying to work with our leads here, coming down along the edge of Boathouse parking, where it used to be.
and when we're not wanting to lose those white pines, but someday Mother Nature's gonna bring them down and I wish they were gone probably.
So at least they got out, they started. They'll, it's gonna be, I think, pretty slow. As far as the color, we're starting with the Sahara color, or a test match of this Sahara, maybe a 3 or 4 yard pour.
Can you see that?
And after we do that, we can deal with them whether we want to go lighter, or whether we want to go darker. Trying to get something that'll kind of match what's up there so that once it's, that's not, they can keep telling you that's not what it's going to look like. That's kind of a visual, but that's not what it's going to look like.
The Sahara,
That, you start with that number, and if you notice that whole line is the same.
Don't say it.
The amount of dye. So we'll start with that, and then we'll work both directions. If we like it, we can leave it in that one section. If we don't like it, we'll have to pull up whatever our test strip is.
Okay.
We're gonna come back onto our brick sidewalk and do this, so it can be left if we like it.
Is it very expensive to do that? I guess my question is getting at, would it be hard to do a section in dark gray as well?
In dark gray.
Just so we had two tests we could look at, if we don't like the other one, and move on. I think those are the only two colors that really come down to it, dark gray and the Sahara.
Do you mean taupe?
So something in a dark gray.
Well, the only issue that I know that a lot of people were talking was to try to have it kind of blend with the red brick, kind of have it blend with the Sahara. Because the stuff out there
The
in
red
the
brick are gonna be this
eventually, but until that happens, so that's why we start with something that kind of fits both. I mean, we can pour a test strip anywhere. I mean, we can-
My only concern is we put in this Sahara color, and over the next 4 or 5 years, it'll fade and it'll look really. That's just my only fear.
It's gonna be hard to.
We'll see how it looks when it even goes in. It might
Yes,
not be
that's
happy there.
the thing. But like he's already told me that he'll pour another test strip.
Okay,
I figured we pour this one, let it dry, look at it, then we can jump to another color as soon as we see it. Because it might be saying, oh yeah, you really like that. Or no, that's not gonna work for us. It might be one. But like I said, either earth tone like that, or there's a bunch of colors on there they tell us to recommend to stay away from. Especially the bottom ones that can't even put dark colors on the very bottom.
The luminary clips last one.
Yeah, they said you cannot do.
Small. Is that what you're talking about? Like, I should talk about that.
yeah, I mean, the sidewalks when they turn dark gray, it did fade, by the time it faded, the other dark gray would be coming in, I would think.
Well, concrete, normally what happens is concrete goes down darker than it's gonna turn light. That's the same thing that the sander is gonna do. You're gonna go down, it's gonna be a little darker, then as it dries, it should lighten up. That's-
But over the years, it'll darken with gray, won't it? Sidewalks will.
No, normally it would get lighter. And then as you walk on them, you might see aggregate that gives you that, but normally they get lighter as they older you get. That's why we figured, some of it was to give it a contrast away from the granite curving and away from them stones, so that you had something that they stood out.
So I was just looking at.
Yeah. And like I said, I sent those pictures, I don't know, that, we got those pictures from, Union College, and that was a sandy color. But the pictures, it's hard to tell whether it's that or not. The only thing that you can contrast against is granite curving, and it is a vast difference from regular concrete.
I have two reactions. One, our supervisor apparently was not aware that we were not doing the section from Harbor Lane down to Main Street yet on the north end. I said, well, he said, those are in terrible shape up there. So I went up and looked, and the stones are fine, except for the piece by the lakeside, which we're probably going to have to do something about anyway.
On the lakeside, that curving runs further now since we had to change that.
Yeah.
So that would have been that's picked up in the Main Street project. We'll patch it up to get it to the Main Street
We'll
project.
patch it up in the summer.
But down in front of Ed's place and all the way down to the corner by Harbor Lane, those bricks are in good shape.
They're in good shape.
I think what happened is they didn't understand totally where the project started and stopped before they stopped.
And then today, one of the town employees here in the building said, well, you're going to start on the beach. And I said, no, we're not. I said, we're starting where the Cambridge stones end. And in time, we will, using our own resources, we work past concrete. Everything else underneath is done.
Yeah, that can all be done by us.
So just an aside, the high peak stones are not in any discernible order. They're not grouped by range or even elevation. And I find that like, maybe it's only me that's irritated by it. People who like the 46 go, well, why is this one next to this one? And the elevations are completely different. They're not even in the same range. Is there any way we can?
Are they
maybe put them in order?
alphabetic, maybe?
I don't think so. I think it's just back and forth.
I don't think there's a rhyme or reason where they are.
That would be nice to start maybe from the beach and work your way up all the way.
Well, well, of course, we'd have to go back and adjust for the ones that were already set, but I did ask Brad, and I think we're going to be removing the granite peaks and replacing them as the project goes forward. So,
Replacing them, you're not going to put them back down or?
no, we're going to put them back into the concrete, but we'll remove them so they're not damaged.
They're all uniform size.
Yep.
Yeah, so that you could pull them out, just put them in different places and not have to cut.
No. Well, they're gonna be in concrete, so.
Right, but I mean, like, even now, if you want to pull something up, they're all, hopefully the same size, I bet they are. But
Yeah, I'm sure they're close to the same size.
When you're pouring around.
Yes,
Yeah, so then they need to know what's going on.
yeah, and you're somebody that's gonna.
I'll take a trip around.
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Somebody-
They're gonna have to place them there.
If somebody had a plan,
That's not in their contract.
it's not in their contract, but if they're reset, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's possible to,
Not much more of a complication, but that would be a deal.
what are you thinking, like, put the grade range all in order, with the grade range is, that kind of
You
stuff?
we can go from just, start with 46, the lowest peak, all the way to Marcy, or go group them by ranges. Depends on how interested you know. You can go as far as you want, as far as how, like, people who have applied will get the idea of like, oh, now I have another group, I like this one and this one, and so on and so forth. You can, or we can just put it in order of like, by elevation, descending or ascending. I know this is completely unnecessary and aside from the overall project, but it's.
Maybe permanent ones.
Yeah, that's what I was just like, oh, it'll happen as I walk around.
Another issue with the sidewalks that Brad and I were doing this morning is a few people were getting ready to put their flowers in. I questioned them doing nothing.
They shouldn't.
Right, did they would tell them that?
We put out a press release, but it didn't, I don't know if anybody went, these properties are all in the township.
Yeah, is it possible maybe that we could just write up a sheet saying, if you have questions on where to plant flowers and tack it to a door or stick it up? People don't.
If somebody made something up, we could just hand out a flyer and put it in the mailbox, you know.
Maybe what we do is have Anita take the press release and print that on a piece of paper like this and then do that.
And they should have them off before they.
People, well, they're going to see today that there's work underway. But, you know, that makes sense. I mean, Sharice is aware of what we're doing, but she doesn't, I don't know that she plants all of those that are not in planters.
Some of the people on through that town section aren't here in this. I think that's where it came from. Fortunately, a lot of neighbors started telling them, but it did help to go up today and tell them what they couldn't, and they were surprised what they couldn't do.
Yeah, it's, you want to waste a lot of money on the other that, there ain't more than you think.
And the dust, you know.
You know, working, setting them.
It's going to be, it's a bit of a challenge for this year for the people, and we have a lot of people that are walking. So, I mean, we're just managing that and trying not to get trying to not expose them to physical harm is going to be a bit of a process.
What do you do with the people walking around Mirror Lake if you take a section out? Will they walk in the road, give you flagging?
There's a flagger. We have one flagger right now. Unless they have two crews, we'll have a flagger in each
So
crew.
the sidewalk will come out into the road? And the
They
road
have
will
a
come
sidewalk
one way?
closed sign, the people have to get off the sidewalk. The flagger will let them around back onto the sidewalk and then the cars come.
Little update on the sewer SCADA, any progress there?
They're working on everything right now. They're getting everything together. So the stuff has to be built. But it's being worked on right now.
You did say they patched the current system up that.
Yeah, what we're doing is, like I said before, I'm not, this computer stuff. There's these cars and a bunch of this other stuff, so what they're doing is non-essential stuff that they could steal it off that. They were using cards from other non-essential stuff, now we don't have to operate it, using those cards to operate the things that we need to operate. And a lot of it's just the software stuff's out of date, you can't, it's not supported, and can't get parts for half of the stuff anymore.
What is it, the one you Windows 7 or XP or something?
Yeah, it's,
Standard.
yeah.
Could be older than that.
Not any issue with a lot of it is because anything you run, same problem with my time clock, I can't run on Windows 10 grades. Just, they won't talk to each other, so I have that one computer that's old sitting there as an XP computer that operates the time clock now.
Even if you have Windows 10, the hardware wouldn't support something.
Somehow we never seem to get completely away from updates and upgrades. No matter what, no matter what we're doing there,
Just do away
they're
with
part of life. You must be seeing it with your
So I'm
system.
having the same problem with all of our systems, that some don't talk to each other. You know, we did upgrade quite a lot. We still have a couple programs that, you know, that's what we're waiting on our lifespan. We updated last August. And that runs on XP actually. So we're waiting on this software for that one. We've won, but they stopped building them after COVID started, so. Work on it.
Right.
One person I know is, we were talking in, are the Main Street bathrooms going open this Friday or Saturday, or we waiting for something to come down from somebody else?
I think I'll push that question back to the county public health people. we'll get you their answer. That's basically been much of it.
Okay. Yeah, we,
Once we open those bathrooms, I'm absolutely certain, I would guess, and again, we were just talking about hotels as essential properties have not been, the state hasn't written the directives yet for stuff like the restrooms, but I would think we would be held to the same standards. So it just hasn't been put in print.
yeah,
The only thing I've heard is that the public restroom has to be cleaned 3 times a day.
3 times a
yeah,
day.
we have 2 of those backpack foggers ordered. They say second week of June. We're gonna steal the fogger they have until we get ours. I want to keep my guys safe more than worry about the people going to the bathroom. So, that's the main concern with that. We had a little issue on Saturday because Greg did not know that because we're going every other day during the weekend. He didn't realize that. And then Saturday, so I had to call him on Saturday or Sunday. Excuse me.
I remember the other issue that you all need to be aware of is that one thing that, and I think this is pretty clear to everybody, we started getting complaints about the trash barrels being overflowing. It wasn't necessarily that we were out of sequence with what we normally do, but because people can't consume on premise, they were buying it. I went up and looked at Nits Park, and that trash barrel had 4 or 5 empty pizza boxes stacked on top of it that could go in the container.
Yeah, they're going to locations where they can eat, they're taking takeout with them. And it's gonna be an issue. So what we're gonna end up having to do in that case is probably gonna end up, if it does get busy, we're gonna have to do it much more often.
Much more often. The other, and understand that has a budget impact on us because I mean, don't hold me to this number, but I think the number I was seeing last year was we're approaching about 20 grand a year for landfill fees for stuff like Main Street and the parks. And we don't do all the park, which does the beach park.
That should, I've talked to Jay about that, but last summer, it should have been a little better last summer because Roby did cut that fee. Instead of trying to make money off us, we only had to say what the tipping fee was, so it was even. So I just have to make sure Jay that he's going to continue that.
Because we're gonna, I think we're gonna probably for some time, we're gonna see until the restaurants have a change of conditions, the people are gonna be doing the same thing that we saw this weekend. The thought in my mind was that that's another reason for maybe being supportive of this Main Street project, because you can get the restaurants to use their table or their street side seating, then they're responsible for their own garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I live and learn. If we finish the Main Street recovery planning, Bill has covered the Main Street part of it. We're also working closely with Bruce. One of the major concerns that the community has is the question of the use of face masks. And the requirements are that you have to have a face mask if you cannot maintain 6 feet of distance from another person, or if you're going into a building or a structure where there's other people. That brought up a discussion a few minutes ago with Jim and Mary Jane about the call that came over. Well, you were not. Jay was on the call with me, of whether we could enforce. And I said, well, it's difficult to enforce something which there's no regulation to enforce it. I said, that's the issue. I said, we will follow closely what the state does. So I did suggest to them that we're very pleased with the set of caution signs that they've created. They're quite nice. And I chatted with Bill a few days ago about the possibility that I don't mind the village. I think we should have a lot more signs out and around in our parks and around the lake. And I wouldn't object to the village allocating some funds to supporting their creation. Bill already has been doing it. That's where the current social distancing lawn signs came from. So I've asked Bill to work with MJ on that. We can certainly do that as a community. And one of them in particular does encourage its masks. The other thing that I've suggested, which I was reminded of from years ago when I violated a city regulation, is that we can have some business cards made up for our police officers and maybe even traffic control. And on one side of them, it might welcome them to Lake Placid. On the other side, or it might have Chief Moore's picture on it. On the other side, it would be a friendly reminder to them that they have to practice social distancing and wear a mask when they're unable to do that or when they're going into buildings. We don't know how long that's going to be with us, but I'm guessing all summer, at least, maybe longer. So, well, we can't and won't write a citation when we go up to it, when we approach a group of people. We can hand this card to them. It's a citation of sorts, but it's a friendly one. That would have a welcome on it, unless somebody has an objection to that.
Well, my question is, no, not that I do not have an objection to that per se. So for instance, let's just say it's 25% capacity, or they're maybe mandated to wear masks in the restaurant. You go in.
It won't be maybe.
What's that?
It isn't maybe, it's guaranteed.
Well, I'm just
You
saying,
won't go in, but you won't be having it on your table.
You won't be able to get out of it, right?
who's going to monitor businesses to ensure that they are just?
I think the answer to that is what's been going on around the country. If you walk in and no one's got a mask, no one's observing it, you walk out.
I think that's one thing.
That's what's going on around the country.
We are responding, Bill is responding, and so is Mike Orticelli,
Okay.
to complaints where somebody has been violating what is a perceived standard. And these are, some of these things are ambiguous. For example, there was a complaint about a boat livery, renting boats, and it appears very clear that you can rent non-power boats. It's not so clear just whether you can rent a power boat or not, and I guess the boat rental place up at near our village website was quite busy this weekend, and so I think with Bill, your office just got those calls.
Well, that's a two-pronged complaint because there's also somebody up there that's precautionary, it's supposed to be self-quarantine. So that's sort of a two-pronged complaint.
One of the orders is he has from.
So, one of the questions was they said they're sending boats out that people are not, 7 people to a boat. Doesn't appear they're the same family. I don't know how they could do that if they weren't the same family, and that person shouldn't be there. So we've called on that particular complaint, we talked to the county attorney and also spoke with the county health nurse. And I don't know if there's any teeth to it, but it's in their hands at this point. But it was investigated. And that's not the only complaint we've had. We've had some that groups of people walking around the lake, not maintaining social distance. And so, their suggestion probably doing maybe the village logo on one side. My guys go up and they get out of the car and maintain a social distance and speak with them. Just ask them, please separate if you could. Or, they get on the loudspeaker of their car and just remind them that there's, still in this.
I gotta tell you, that's pretty damn intimidating. When Kenna and I were in China, we were walking across the concrete patios around the Olympic structures. These were massive, big open concrete areas. You get to 11 o'clock at night when they close that park, and if you're not out of there, they just come right up behind you and they give you a blast.
No, we're not keeping the horn.
It was intimidating.
PA system.
I guess my concern is that there, in the news you saw, like this campsite, suppose people are camping and like starting fires, and I've had several people reach out to me that it's starting to, there's a beginning momentum of friction with people coming into town. So if we're not creating an expectation of people that are here being safe, that we can't really impose an expectation on our visitors to be safe. So what's safe, basically the state dictates that, but I understand if you don't want to go into a business where they're not wearing masks, well, obviously that's a step one, then you just don't. But then also during this time, it's creating a sort of impression to our guests that that's okay. But then it may be okay for that particular moment with that store owner, so on and so forth. But then it creates sort of a ripple effect of friction, because now we have some people that are walking not wearing masks or not social distancing. And if we're looking to get our residents more comfortable with guests coming in, I think there's some standards that we have to kind of expect out of our residents, that then at the same time maintaining an expectation on our guests. So we make sure that everyone is kind of following the rules.
Well, and it's very clear that Roost is trying to promote an atmosphere of education, which is a big part of this, and it is education. There were a couple of individuals at Exit 30 over the weekend who starting Friday afternoon were promoting a protest along Route 73 between Exit 30 and the ski jumps. Well, it turned out the only people came out were the gal and her girlfriend. But the golden opportunity lost. The signage that they were displaying was basically that these people should go home. It was unfriendly. It didn't seem to deter traffic too much. However, it was an opportunity where if they'd taken the same opportunity to be educational about it and had some masks to hand out or some information about what to expect as you come into the High Peaks area, that would have been a positive. Could have been viewed positively. As it turned out, I don't think it deterred any traffic, but it was picked up mildly. I saw a couple of communications this morning.
Yeah, I think and this was just the first weekend, and as the weather turns nicer and more people flock, I can just see it start to the problem exacerbate. And it just isn't going to get locals comfortable with, hey, we're making sure that we're marketing to people outside, external, say, hey, we're taking this seriously. We sacrificed for 3 months. We've had very minimal amount of cases because we took it seriously. We social distance, we took the quarantine seriously, and we just don't want to throw that all away. And if the locals are under, they want to get back to work, but at the same time, we got to make sure that all their efforts are protected.
Here's something else that I'm looking at. Roost had asked Jay and I to sign a letter, which was going to be addressed to the seasonal property owners. And they actually prepared a letter, came over, either Jay or I were comfortable with it, so we each redesigned our letter. Jay's, if you go out on the town site, you'll see it today. I, in the meantime, came across the letter that Adirondack Health, Sylvia Getman, put out, that was a much friendlier and much more useful letter. I have no idea where that letter went, although it did appear on Facebook a couple of times. But what I'd like to do is not reinvent the wheel. I'd like to, with your knowledge and support, I'd like to ask Sylvia if it's okay, and Jay would join me on this, if we take her letter and put an endorsement on it, that we endorse the directions that the hospital has given. And that letter would then be inserted with our electric bills and would go out to only non-12946 addresses. That would certainly would catch all our second homeowners. Putting it out on Facebook, you're not guaranteed where it went. I think the way the hospital may have used it because they were concerned that many of their summer residents were feeling that maybe the region didn't want it here. So I think they were trying to write something that was cautionary, but educational and supportive. and the letter is well written. I'll send you all, I'll get a copy of it out to you. But I think we could do something with our electric billing. We have the ability to insert a separate sheet. And I would like to just simply take her letter with her signature and put our endorsements on it. Jay would participate. Much more focused.
Okay, I'd like to see it.
We'll do that. Because when I first looked at it, I'm going like, the tone is so important here in terms of what we write, and it's got to be useful, and it's got to be educational, these people, and it's got to be informative. And it does talk about the limited resources of our grocery stores and bring 2 weeks of supplies when you come. Plan on quarantine for 2 weeks. That one,
So those are, you just named the 2 top issues that communicated to me that they see people not doing.
and I think, again, we want to speak as institutions, whether we're municipal or healthcare, we want to speak with one set of directions. And that was my argument with Bruce. I didn't want this becoming, because I might say one thing, somebody says something else, you begin to get, you don't get the sense that it's all together.
Has anyone talked to the supermarkets? I mean, is there anything really that, I mean, do you really want people not buying from our supermarkets to come here for 2 weeks? I mean, all
I don't think the shelves are overflowing.
what does that?
Go and try to buy a Lysol cleaning product.
Yeah.
Well, is that because of what they're buying? I mean, at least I think you ought to talk to them. They might go, you told everyone not to come buy from us.
No, example would be, I might
And
have,
that's another reason for not throwing this out on social distancing, but to be very focused where we think it's going. Is the people are coming, if you're coming here, be prepared for the fact, some of our shelves are a little sparse, depending on whether it's Lysol cleaning one day or pork chops the next day or.
or $8 pound of hamburger. It just, my one experience is there's this lady who had a full, and I just want to preface by saying I understand the context of what transpired, but this lady had whole entire 2 carts completely full. And then as I checked out, and as I was just happened to be parked near, went right to a Jersey license plate. You know, perception is reality. Someone else, I'm one of the, this is, it does poke at me a little bit. But I understand the circumstances, but people who are less patient and more cavalier about how they feel, you're going to start, they've been starting to speak up a little bit more.
For example, there were no hot dogs the other day, but my wife found some Hebrew hot dogs. She called me and said, "What's the difference?" And I said, "There isn't any."
You eat one, left the right one.
But it is true. I mean, there's been runs on products, but on the other hand, they just said to her, "It's Memorial Day weekend. What do you expect? Everybody's staying at home."
It would be interesting to see what the stores say if they're buying limited because they know there's not the volume here.
No, I don't think our chain stores are buying limited. I think that everything I've read so far about the delivery system or the supply chains for our national stores is that the supply chains themselves are stressed.
Yes, and whatever they have, what would be traditionally designed for restaurants are not easily converted to retail. So that's why a lot of it's
Do I think I really kind of thought by now our grocery stores would be back to normal. They have got more toilet paper than they had.
All the paper aisles are full up.
Yeah.
Still doesn't stop my wife from buying the cheapest. What are you doing? What's this being recorded?
Anything else under restoration and status? Phil, anything else you think about or Brad?
The only thing where you want hand sanitizer stations, and we built 6 of them.
Okay.
So
Are we using the New York clean
Yes.
containers?
Yes.
Okay.
built. I put one at Bruce, they put a sign on it for me. They're gonna give us the other signs, put it on the other 5 that are at the garage. One on each restroom will be outside the restroom.
Okay.
And then Mids Park maybe, number 1 park, and maybe at the beach.
Yep. Which is probably going to have to have more than one.
Said he was.
I understand the beach was pretty busy.
Yeah, nobody's listening to any of that stuff anymore. Squeeze.
Well, the problem is that if they allow beaches to reopen 50%, how do you measure?
It's no different than what it was over the weekend.
Well, you have those areas where they've drawn circles. That's something I can think of.
Or,
A circle.
or even have like bouncers at the boat rooms, just like, okay, 2 people out.
Or overshot.
Okay, 2 people.
Go follow them, they're straight.
That was surprising. I ran in there the other day, I'll just run in quick. It was something I needed.
Wait outside for 20 minutes and finally get inside. There's 8 guys working, and only 5 people out next door.
No, hopefully. It's,
They don't care how many goes for.
Over there, it's never changed.
Oh, yeah, I picked up a pizza. Well, like, it's supposed to be curbside. Well, they just taped off the seats. Everyone's in there like, oh, all right. I'll just take my pizza.
Well, they don't change some things sooner or later than this, to have everybody doing what they want. It's
Well,
a matter of time before.
I'm sure this is going, over time, it will ease into a normal way of life, but normal may not be the way we know it completely. I mean, I'm trying awfully hard to get used to these things. When your glasses are fogged up all day long, all that thing. But just moving on under budget update.
Yeah.
We all set.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
Thanks for the-
Which one's the sanitizer?
I got 2 sanitizers on my desk. One is a bottle of New York State's best, and one is a bottle of chartreuse. I think the chartreuse is probably the winner.
The New York State stuff, just spray them. Rubbing alcohol.
It's a little rough.
Oh, I meant to ask before they left, how many people have been tested in the village?
Village employees, or
Yeah, all village employees been tested.
I don't think so.
maybe you send an email on.
I'm just curious if it's mandatory or just.
I'll shoot it out to the department heads and see what we
I
can
think
get.
that's good.
We asked everybody to get tested that could, but it was a request. It wasn't mandatory.
Negative on both antibodies.
Have you been tested, Scott? I do with the nasal swab,
That was a little uncomfortable. Well, at least she told me ahead of time. She said, it's gonna be uncomfortable.
but it's not even on the pain scale. It's just mildly discomfort.
Oh, yeah. Well, leading up to that, it was still snowing in May, so I had the heat on, so my nose was dry. So she's like, working it in, I'm like, whoa.
So the basic thing to do is to take some nasal spray ahead of time
Next time, yeah, for
and
sure.
make sure that you're,
Yeah,
I wondered about that.
Like I said, take the pain scale 1 to 10, then take a discomfort. I put a 3 in the discomfort. That's about it.
Doesn't hurt, just.
Yeah.
we'll follow up on that. On the budget, Mindy has worked with the departments and we've got some rough numbers. I'm going to try to, between now and Tuesday, when I hope to deliver the mayor's recommended budget to her, so she can bring it to the board. And then we'll schedule some budget meetings and show for that purpose. We're actually in pretty good shape timing wise this year, which is really a relief. But there are some things that I've got to check with Mindy on. I don't have yet any information on the kind of the tax rates, assessment rules and stuff like that. We'll try to get that between now and Tuesday.
So within, when you're projecting revenues for,
It's not going to be a good year.
that's one of the, I'm interested as far as parking revenues. Have we had any with the moratorium on having to pay rent? Are we having any, do we anticipate any revenue issues as far as
I've
tax levies?
I've got Indy, I think you're going to see a lot more. You will see more re-levy water bills, that's for sure.
Okay.
Keep in mind that we're still not able to do anything with the people that don't pay all winter, so they're still not paying. And unfortunately, that means they've got a larger number to pay whenever the time comes that the state lets us off the hook here. So that's, Indy's looking at that. And I had a discussion with him just a few minutes ago about department revenues there. We also are seeing substantially lower revenue flows, water billing,
Electric.
and electric for sure. Yeah, I mean, we're down a lot. So
I can't speak for everybody, and I know there's a lot of people that can't get unemployment, but all my employees are on unemployment, making much more than they ever did working. I mean,
yeah,
so
that's
that's
been a
not,
good deal.
that's really not going to be an issue.
Well, it's gonna, well, that's in July.
I think talking
In July. Well,
But
but
depending, but I think there's some strings.
and end of July is the normal deadline. I mean, 26 weeks was expanded to 39 weeks for regular unemployment in New York State. And then this federal program runs through July.
New York State has.
through July, you know.
I had a call from an individual who was, I think, looking for advice that she didn't have to go back to work. And I said, well, she said, well, how do I know if I'm going to be safe? And I said, well, you call your employer, or when you get there, you ask your employer what steps they've taken to ensure your personal health. And she said, well, isn't there some law? And I said, well, no, there isn't. But I said, because she was talking about a hotel. I said, there aren't any standards. Yeah, there aren't any more standards today than there were 2 months ago, but there will be sooner or later. And I said, the important things you need to know are, and most of the hotels that I'm hearing from are saying, okay, you know, our housekeepers don't go in the room unless it's vacant. One hotel told me that they were only cleaning the room every third day, which seems to be fairly, I've heard one at 3 days, one at 2 days, that they're reducing the exposure and nobody goes in the room when there's a guest in the room. So they're doing that. I guess the employee is given PPE, whatever stuff they need, gloves and masks, and maybe even aprons now. But again, this hasn't been written yet, so it's anybody's guess. I happen to get that information from one of the North Country Chamber safety webinars that Jay and I listened to, which was handled by a safety officer because the state hasn't written those rules yet. So it was largely focused on what the Department of Labor sees as the requirements for employees, not for the guests. There was no discussion with restaurants or hotels about protecting guests, I guess.
Well, if you don't, they won't come, so.
And not to extend the conversation about workers' comp, are they eligible? I know I've read there have been discussions, but I know it's difficult to prove. There's some discussion because it's difficult to prove whether you've contracted COVID at your work and then whether able to workers' comp.
I've got a human resource manual on my desk, which I think gets into those type of issues. It's, if you want to read it, it's about that thick.
Not that we've had very many people, the people we have, nobody has wanted to make service. So going in a room with someone there is just not an issue.
Not an issue, that's good. Summer's not here yet, though.
Yes, I was gonna say, the more we hammer out I guess from a municipality standpoint.
I
I think
did
it's a bit more difficult, like having a clear sort of it's moving forward transition.
I did get a letter from a doctor, apparently has a cabin in the woods up here, which she comes to in the Adirondacks, isolates at interesting terms. But she was expressing something next to being appalled that we were even considering an Ironman event here, given the apparent weakness of our hospital. And I chose to craft an answer that just simply said we are closely following the standards of New York State and our public health officers, as well as our local institution. And by the way, that letter was written simply to give people advice as to what they might expect when they arrived here. So I said the idea of social distancing, the idea of quarantining, the idea of bringing 2 weeks supplies with you is all intended to be helpful so people aren't surprised in the end. And I said to her on top of that, I said Lake Placid, which hosts a number of events throughout the year, is looking closely month by month. I said, if you look on our calendar, you'll see that there's nothing scheduled right now in June, nothing scheduled in July. August is currently under scrutiny, and I can't tell you about September. That's going to depend upon where the city of New York is. But large gatherings are currently limited to 10 people.
So I have a quick question.
I had a feeling she might have been a little anti, which, some people are.
And this came up, I had a conversation with MJ regarding that, so if we have even a minor outbreak, we have 9 ventilators in the Tri-Verse area. Even an outbreak of 1,000 that happened at the same time, we would still be, if you do the math, 50%, and then 10%, and then 2%, we're still about 5 people over the limit. Although it's not the municipality's responsibility, but she had mentioned that it'd be the hospital's responsibility. Have there been a dialogue with the county board of health and the state as far as additional ventilators in the event that we do have an outbreak, since we're, I would say, limited with our resources? We have a fair amount of beds, but with the
Well, remember all hospitals in New York State were requested to allocate of their current bed count anywhere from 50 to 100% of their beds for the COVID disease. So there is that. As to a discussion, I can't say with any knowledge that our public health people in the county had that discussion. They may well have, but the governor has made it clear that he will move ventilators wherever needed. He made that very clear.
It's also hard. I mean, this is all, as you hear on TV, fact-driven, data-driven. But if you sit there and really look at the numbers, they don't have to tell you. It looks like the odds of going on a ventilator are 0.014. But they never tell you, okay, we had 100 outbreak of COVID. How many of those people just stayed at home like it was flu? How many went in the hospital, and how many went on a ventilator? If you try to read between the lines and do the math, I'd come down to a ventilator with a chance of 0.014. People go on in our area pretty low.
But we kind of fit into, we are an aging population, and
A healthy aging.
reasonably so, but I would say we are an older, we're an older region, for sure. So I would say that our region would be, to some extent, vulnerable, and that's purely anecdotal, but if we're to, people take the census, since we're running a little behind on that one, but that would be the one thing that would be concerning to me, because when we have Mercy Care aging in place, that is an actual organization that's pushing to help incorporate components in each community for older generation to be able to kind of move about. So if there's an organization that has some significance and is making a push, that means there is a significant population of people that are older, and they just, I know that the probabilities, but even though there's appearance that we're younger, but if you look around, we are between the Tri-Lakes, there's a fair amount of older.
And I think the people that are older, at least the ones that I know, they're not going out.
But that's the thing is,
Which I mean, is going to help them prevent if there was something.
moving forward, but our sole source of revenue is tourism, which is inviting people in. So once we invite people in, we have people who work, who are in contact, then go back and their family members. So you see that once we invite people in, then it starts the dominoes. Being prepared ahead of time is what, I was mentioning to Mary, are we prepared to have ventilators? And if would, what's the trigger mechanism?
From what I've read about the hospital, maybe you can correct me on this, before the last 6 weeks, I've been I've been hearing they've been having meetings after meetings. That's what you're talking
Well, but if I don't know, and I'm at the town hall, it's in the public.
about.
Yeah, who knows in the public, so that's another way to put people's mind at ease, that we're prepared. So then as the influx comes in slowly and safely, we won't have as much friction. And we can get back to normal. That's the only.
Well, I think the bigger concern is that there's a substantial part of our community that is apprehensive, that may be a mild word, about resuming activity, and why shouldn't they be? We're instilling that. And I think what the state is trying to do now is really move into the educational stage. We're going to be with this for a while. I don't see this being rolled overnight. I hope it is, but and what if this becomes a way of life? Maybe we're in these cursed things all the time. I don't know.
If we get through the next routine pandemic.
But right now, I think the things that Fauci talks about, and again, I do think he probably is pretty credible, are the issues of social distancing, face masks, hand washing, all things that we've known.
Mhm.
I mean, we grew up as little kids being told to wash our hands.
Mhm.
Now you're supposed to really do it.
Now we have a motivation for maybe more motivated to do it. But again, life goes on. And if we stayed in the state that we've been in,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's hard to envision what would be left in the community.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that is concerning to me is that, community that still a little overwhelmed and maybe to some extent felt a little relieved from this. But now, as we get, I wouldn't say get back to complete normal, but as we transition back, and if it's not done, I would say, in a safe, methodical, and informative way, there could be some self-inflicted wounds and create some situations.
So I think that's why the governor has chosen to put this into, created the metrics and then the phases. Whether it's a phase beyond phase 4 remains to be seen, I guess, at this point. Somebody said to me the other day, well, phase 4, you can have anything you want. I'm like, I don't.
Under the new normal, but
Under the new normal, I don't think that you're going to see things. Look at the NBA, they're talking about one site where all their games are going to be, but we're going to self-contained. Why? Because they can get the controls in place to give their people some assurance that they're safe.
Baseball is,
Yeah.
we're doing the own stadium.
Same thing. So some of us will just be happy that we can watch a ball game again. It's current. Although that golf match between Tiger and Nicholson was
interesting.
pretty interesting.
Was that the one with Brady and?
Yeah. Yeah. It was even a hole in one.
A whole lot of.
But, so, we'll, anyway, I'll try to get as much of this budget finished as we can for the board meeting, and then we'll schedule whatever meetings you all feel are
Okay.
useful and desirable. We've got until the end of the month of June to adopt it. Yeah, water revenues, I am somewhat worried about our water, fund balance of water is skinny. But looking at our year-to-date budget numbers at least a week ago, I wasn't really happy with them because our expenses seem to be ahead of our revenues for the year. But then I realized that embedded in the debt service was $990,000 that we paid, EAN that we paid off for the church property on Main Street. That the corresponding revenue was fund balance, it did not come out of the budget. So that's what Paul, unfortunately, our current accounting system when you write the check, it dumps it, in this case, it dumped it into debt service. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't reach out and to a corresponding revenue source. The InCode 10, Mindy has been working feverishly on upstairs now for days. That conversion will allow us to do some things that we haven't in the accounting system. So it's good. All of our capital projects will have, we'll be able to track the project independently. We'll be able to track any outside grant funds as to where we stand on those. It really is, it's a dream. Almost makes me wish I was going to be around a lot longer to use it. But I think that's going to help us a lot in terms of that. But that's always been one of the fallacies of the way municipal budgeting was done. But it's, those of you that survive me are going to hopefully see some improved, easier way to understand what's going on. So overall, at least at the year-to-date point, when you factor that on, we're okay.
When do you hope to have InCode 10 in place?
It's being worked on right now.
Yeah.
And it will be operational at the start of the budget year.
Great. A lot of work, I'm sure.
Is, Mindy, she doesn't say a lot, but you realize that when we hired Megan, our plan was that we were going to train Megan to do some of the work that Mindy was doing for electric. But given what's happened with staffing, we haven't been able to put that in place yet. So Mindy has been carrying the load. And then she can get it all done in a couple days a week because she's got a child at home, like many. She's been working from home, and I asked her today how her program with her degree is going, and she's got 5 weeks left to go on that.
Strong lady.
So she's doing a lot. And so I was just thinking. But anyway, that's where we're at the moment. Unless anything you guys want to bring up that we haven't covered. It seems like most everything is either sidewalk, Main Street, or where we are with the virus.
Goodbye, Nate.
At least there's progress.
Yep. If not, we can close the meeting out.
What does it take to raise a child that takes brewery to school?
That's what I mean. It's, we're gonna realize a decade from now, that we have a whole generation of kids educated by day drinkers. Oh, well. Gentlemen, have a good evening. Enjoy the